Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I can't see anyone. Don't take this the wrong way, but I almost wish that everyone I knew were not here. But hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm Lisa Eisenpresser, Nicole's partner and producer of the Cure for Chronic Pain podcast, and co-founder of our company, Break Awake. Welcome to the 92nd Street Wise Buttonweiser Hall at the Arnold Center. This program is part of Spark Your Health, sponsored by the Mount Sinai Health Center, a dynamic platform that brings together cutting-edge health talks virtually and in person to enrich and save lives. I want to thank first the Y for hosting us. We were driving up here and Nicole literally said, "Oh my God, this is an effing dream to be coming to the 92nd Street Y and talking." So we're genuinely so honored to be part of an incredible storied history of platforming thought leaders and bringing community together around the most innovative ideas. I also want to appreciate Penguin Random House, Krupp Communications, Nicole's incomparable agent, Joy Tutela, and Dr. Strax, who flew in from Chicago and wrote Nicole's forward. We literally could not have a better team. It's really what they mean when they say dream team. It is so great to be here in New York, where Nicole, Christina, and I are all from, to almost look out, but I can't see, but to feel the presence of my family, my parents, children, Nicole's, our friends from high school, I think from summer camp, literally, from college, and of course, our podcast audience and members of our Break Awake community and Omega retreats, and everyone who's listening virtually. I think we've got 100 people listening virtually, so it's so good to have you all here. And New York is special as well because it's also where Dr. Sarno practiced as a pioneer in the field of mind-body medicine. His groundbreaking explanation of why we suffer from chronic symptoms introduced people to a new understanding of the problem, but most importantly, offered a solution, one that Nicole was able to use to recover from her own debilitating pain and go on to teach with him and evolve his work. As a result, Nicole's become the most relatable translator of the brain science behind chronic pain and what you can actually do about it. Our podcast with 7 million downloads speaks to a new generation, and her new book, Mind Your Body, is a beacon for those who are struggling to find relief. We're honored to have Dr. Sarno's daughter, Christina, with us tonight. Her thriving psychotherapy practice right here in the city has brought his methods to so many New Yorkers. We are so excited that the new professional training the three of us created together, the Sarno SAC solution, will enable practitioners all over the world to do the same for their communities. So tonight, we are taping a live podcast to talk about Nicole's book, Mind Your Body, which landed on shelves literally yesterday. And although it's an incredible read, I'm a little biased, but it really is, the real reason it shot up to number 14 in all of Amazon books yesterday after our segment on the Today Show is because the whole world is hungry for a solution to chronic pain and anxiety. If you came here today thinking you'd listen for information to help your parents, your neighbor, your dramatic best friend, I totally get it. But what I really hope is that you walk away knowing that this is actually about all of us. None of us are immune to the fear and meaning we attach to our pain. But tonight, you'll be invited to see it differently. I think you'll be surprised that what we teach you already believe. In the spirit of this, let's do a little exercise just to test it out quickly. Everyone, raise your hand if you've ever had a stressful day or felt really overwhelmed and gotten a headache. Yes, wow, that is a lot of people. Okay, great. Now, keep your hand up if you ran to the ER that night for a CT scan of your brain. You see, we all believe that emotional stimuli cause physical reactions. Stress causes a headache. Getting bad news makes you lose your appetite. Having to get up and give a speech in front of people you haven't seen in decades can make your cheeks flush and your stomach a little queasy. We all know that big feelings are experienced physically in the human body. But when anything becomes chronic, we really lose the plot. We chase cures that never fully relieve our symptoms and leave us and our doctors bewildered. With nearly 2 billion people suffering globally from chronic pain, Nicole, Christina, and I are really honored and excited to be working in the solution space. So 2 things before we get started. We want you to be able to participate. So there are going to be ushers who are distributing cards for your questions, which will be answered toward the end of the conversation. And for those viewing the live stream, please submit your questions in the chat. I'll come back and get as many answered as we can. And please do join us in the lounge after the talk where Nicole will sign your books. So, without further ado, let's get into it. I'm thrilled to welcome Nicole Sachs and Christina Sarno.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I think quite a few of you know me, but for those of you who don't, I'm Christina Sarno. I'm Dr. John Sarno's daughter, and I work in this space, training people and helping people, sufferers. I also have to speak quickly to the podcast audience.
Yes, ma'am.
Because you guys don't know how legit this is. This is like for real. Our names are big, and this is like a real stage, and I can't see any of you because the lights are so good. So, but it's absolutely an honor. Like, it's a complete honor to be here with you, Nicole. And we'll get into it more, but this really feels so moving, thinking about my father's legacy. So before I go further, I introduce to you Nicole Sachs.
Woo! Whew. That hit me. Hi, everybody. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you to my partner, Lisa Eisenpresser. For any of you guys who have received this book or might today, I dedicated the book to Lisa, who took a life-changing message and took it from a whisper to a roar. And it is what I appreciate most, is that I have a partner to bring this message to the world. And as you may have heard, as I tearfully spoke 2 podcasts ago, I never feel alone anymore. So thanks, Lisa. And I also just want to call out that my mother is here, Mommy.
Hi, Mom.
It's a big deal for her to trek up to New York. Thank you, Danny, for bringing her. And, you know, I said this in the acknowledgments of my book, but if everyone in the world had a mother like mine, there'd be far less pain in the world. So, Mom, I love you, and thank you for being here. All right. Let's have a podcast. Let's get started. We're at the 92nd Street Y. Jesus Christ, go.
I know, it's crazy. Okay, so first I just want to say how honored I am to be here, right? Genuinely, that Nicole and Lisa have been working with me for the last few years, developing trainings and thinking about this work together. But one of the things that, when I was listening to that podcast from a couple days ago, or a couple weeks ago, that really stands out to me, right, is how hard it is to deliver this message.
Yes.
Right? And that my father, who many of you knew, you know, very quietly also suffered not being able to get enough of his message out there. And to say it's a message is a little bit of a, is a little unclear, because it's actually a very scientific way of understanding why people have chronic symptoms and how their suffering can actually stop, right? So my father was quite lonely in this place, particularly professionally. And in the last few years with you and Lisa, I have felt much less lonely, right? And sometimes I wonder, because everybody knows I like a little bit of a spotlight, those of you who are here know me, why it has actually felt so difficult for me. And now, in reading your book and in working with you and in listening to your podcast, I feel so unbelievably grateful at your gift for language, for relatability, and for like genuinely being a steward and a spokesperson for this work worldwide. And I'm not like fluffing you up. I'm like really being serious. There's so many reasons I'm happy to be here, but I'm gonna leave them aside to start thinking together maybe parts of the story that people don't know. A lot of the podcast listeners know, but I don't know if this audience knows. Well, first of all, how you met my dad.
Yes, let's start at the very beginning. It's the very best place to start. So I knew everyone was thinking that, so I just figured I'd go ahead and say it. Many people know my story, so I'll just go through it really quickly. But I was very young when I was diagnosed with a condition called degenerative spondylolisthesis. I was 19 years old, had to come home from college early. I know a couple of my college people are in this room. I don't know where you are. I had to leave. It was like sorority hell week. It was kind of embarrassing. I had to be carted home. And for those people who ever say the pain is in your head, or people who are saying the pain isn't real, at 19 years old to be carried to the bathroom by your father, I was not making it up. Obviously, I was suffering.
Definitely.
Yeah. So anyway, when I was diagnosed, it made complete sense, of course, that I had lower back pain, and I had this condition. Nobody would ever think that would be an illogical conclusion, that it was the reason for my pain. But through my journeys, understanding mind-body medicine, finding the work of Dr. Sarno, I opened my mind. I did what I want everyone listening here and in the podcast world to do, which is I replaced my fear with curiosity. I replaced my skepticism and my hesitation with wonder. Maybe life could be different, because the initial doctor who saw my film said, the likelihood that you will have a biological child is slim to none.
How many of your children
How many
are here?
people came out of me? Raise your hands. One here and one taking professional photos. There she is on the right. And so, and there's a third, by the way, who's home. She's 17, she has to be at school. But the point of the matter is that I defied those expectations because I read a book called Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno. You have heard of that, haven't you?
Yeah.
You may have read it.
I have a few copies of it.
And that wasn't the end of my journey, because I actually had to realize that I hadn't really done the work. When I first heard about Dr. Sarno's theories, the way I interpreted it was, you could be having a lot of rage, and then you might feel that in your back. It was such a simplistic understanding of the theory. But it made sense to me, mostly because I was a psychology student, and at the time I was actually getting my master's, and I thought to myself, hey, listen, I don't want spinal fusion surgery. I don't want to live a life where I can't, travel and have children and exercise. So if this guy says that I could be enraged and it could be coming out through my back, fine, I'll do a science experiment on myself. And so what I did was, when I was really pissed off, or if I was really experiencing some agitation and my back was killing me, I would just pause for a minute and I'd be like, all right, what's pissing me off? And I would do a little mental inventory, and then I attended to my pain a few minutes later, and I was like, it's kind of not there. It was the beginning. It was like a crack in the shell of my understanding that there could be something more. But as I went through my life, I ended up needing to actually do the work. I ended up understanding that we live in a mind-body system, and sometimes you feel things in your heart, in your emotions, and sometimes you feel things in your body, and they're literally interchangeable. And I went to see Dr. Sarno. I went to see him in person because I really needed to understand, how can I actually live free of chronic pain? Because I wasn't free of chronic pain.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, you can.
So when you went to see my dad, was there anything And I know you and I have talked about this before, but I am actually curious. Was there anything specific that you learned from him in those beginning days, right? Or that you got from your experience with him that, you know, really changed the course of things for you? Because I understand that you started to buy in and understand, you know, what the theory was. And my father was talking about repressed emotions and the nervous system and why you're, you know, and really looking physiologically at what was happening. But I know a lot of people who knew him and a lot of people who have success, something else is happening in their initial moments, right?
So one of my favorite stories that I know you love, Christina,
I love
is,
this.
okay, so anyone who knows me a little bit, in the nicest possible way, I'm a bit type A. I'm one of those students.
Like that much.
I want to do a good job. I want to really try hard. And so when I was getting ready for my appointment with Dr. Sarno, I wrote a novel about when my back hurt. When I turn this way, when I bend this way, sometimes it's near, sometimes it's down my leg, sometimes it's in my shoulder. It's so weird. Sometimes it moves to the left side, the right. But it was detailed. And I came in and I solemnly slid it across the desk. And I said, Dr. Sarno, this is the way my back, and he had a metal garbage can that was right next to his desk. And he took it and he didn't lose my gaze. And he just threw it in the garbage can. And he said, come on, let's give you the physical exam. And he gave me a physical exam. He was a medical doctor. He looked at my films and he said, I'm going to tell you something. You could go to the Mayo Clinic. You could go to Hopkins. No doctor is going to tell you that this abnormality could cause down the leg, up the shoulder, sometimes in the left, sometimes in the right, right?
Right, totally.
The man was
He
like...
would come home like irate, and like, today somebody came in, and their doctors told them that their pain was, and I don't do the medical diagnoses very well, was like L4C2, whatever.
Right.
And there's no way that's causing this guy has pain all over his body. This was my father's mantra every night at dinner.
And so I know for you, you were like, and I had to grow up in that shit. And I'm going to say to you, there's a couple kids in this room who know how that feels.
I have deep ties.
And
with them.
you guys should hang out with Christina because all their friends too. They love to approach their friends and be like, "Can I explain something to you?" You know. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't.
I didn't tell my friends anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on.
But the point is, he sat me down after this exam and he said, I want to tell you something. I think you're very angry. And you guys, you know me, I'm like a love bucket. And I was like, I'm sorry, Dr. Sarno, I don't think you understand. Yes, I get sad and I get scared. I really don't get angry. And he goes, oh, you're angry, all right. It was so fantastic. And so he explained to me that the best way to get to your repressed emotions was through journaling. And I literally looked at him, and this is where I was like getting a little sassy, because we'd been together for probably about an hour at this point. He'd already thrown out my paper, you know, like we were getting tight. And I said to him, I'm sorry, I don't think you don't understand. I can't lift my babies into the crib. I don't really think you know, like, journaling. And he said, just trust me. If you want to get to what you do not yet know, sit down quietly and start writing about it. And I said, okay.
It's so wonderful hearing this story again, and I know that I've heard it before, but I haven't heard it in quite this way, actually, so it's pretty great for me. Because I grew up with this knowledge. And so I grew up not knowing another way, like not having a different understanding of how people developed aches and pains, and it was plenty annoying, right? Like as a child growing up, you know, I'd be like, oh, my stomach, and my dad would be like, what's happening with Laura? And I'd be like, I want Pepto, and he'd be like, let's talk about Laura, you know, and she's not here, but
Obviously,
other people who know
if
her
there were so many
are.
problems with Laura,
Yeah.
she's not invited tonight.
And so I grew up with this gift, really genuinely, of having full permission to have my full range of feelings. and sometimes actually being encouraged to do it, which I also found annoying. But I didn't, and my father would come home and explain to me that people had chronic symptoms and they were suffering and they were on the floor and they were in wheelchairs and they were losing their jobs. I mean, really horrific stories. And that when he taught them what was happening and when they began to learn that the reservoir, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, of a repressed emotion was available, that they would start to feel relief. Like when he'd say, knowledge is the cure. Right.
So I'm channeling him a bit right now. I'm like hearing him in my head. I'm not that weird. It's like, just what I mean, my own thoughts. And even though, I am a little bit that weird. But anyway, what I want to say is I want to talk a little bit about the brain science, because I know that the one thing that Dr. Sarno was missing in his experience of helping people was that the science hadn't yet caught up to his genius.
Right, and I think that it is the single most significant development in the field since my father did his work. And I agree with you entirely, right? Like that he did his best with what was available to him to explain. And he used to say, my work is more scientific than surgery. And it really, really was. He would say, people will go in and cut you open and remove something or put in a piece of metal and tell you that this is gonna fix it, but the whole system is reacting. The whole system is doing it. It was so, sort of well thought out, and yet the neuroscience and the imaging technology and the things that have come since then weren't there for him. So I have to tell you guys that the way that Nicole talks about the brain science is so cool. No, seriously. In my role as a therapist, finding language, particularly for me because I was born in it, so I don't have the experience of having, the revelatory experience, which I think is so unbelievably moving. And when I get the opportunity to listen to Nicole talk about the brain science, which she's going to do now because I'm going to let her do it, sort of, maybe. It's just fantastic. So please, take us through what is happening when you have chronic symptoms.
I think that the biggest barrier to this work is people who don't understand that the problem isn't necessarily in the part of the body that is hurting. And Dr. Sarno knew this, but now in terms of like nervous system science and the studies that are coming out, it is crystal clear that the same place in the brain that lights up when your partner breaks up with you or when your dog passes away, the pain center of the brain is exactly the same as the pain center of the brain that lights up when we have physical pain. And so all of these imaging studies have risen to the point where we can know that chasing the place in the body that the pain is expressing itself will be a lifelong whack-a-mole game that I want for none of you and for no person that walks this planet. And it is so important for me to explain. And actually, just give me some indication, maybe some applause. Did anyone see my piece on the Today Show a couple days ago?
They all saw it.
I was literally shitting myself. I just have to be honest with this audience now that I'm with my people. I do not know how I pulled that off because as you guys can see, for both of us, long form is our game.
We have to really watch
4
the
minutes
clock.
live TV, I don't recommend it. But it was, I was glad that somehow it was able to move forth. But I want to reiterate one example that I gave there because I actually think it's the best way to explain it in a metaphorical way, which is when a building is on fire, the fire alarm goes off, and the fire alarm has to be loud and really annoying because it has to get your attention. Because you need to know that there's a problem. But the fire alarm is not the problem is the fire. And so imagine that the fire company arrives and they train their hoses at the alarm. The plastic screaming thing, the box on the wall, and they're all there with their hoses onto the alarm. The fire will consume the house.
Yeah.
nothing is going to change, but if they just turn their hoses to the fire. So the way I explain it is your migraine, your back pain, your gut issue, your fibromyalgia, your pelvic pain, your long COVID. I say with my hand to my heart, the symptoms of long COVID are mind body. And for people who are suffering, it is a very serious situation. As we both know, the biggest news outlets in the world love to write articles with two themes about chronic pain and about long COVID. One, we have no idea why this is happening.
Not a clue.
And two, there is no solution.
No.
And they come out constantly. There was a huge one that came out last week. And so what I want to say is, chasing the symptoms is like putting a hose on the fire alarm. And when you turn the hose toward your repressed emotional world that is bubbling up, and this includes stored trauma, this includes stuff from childhood, and this also just includes the annoyances of daily life. Daily life is annoying. Your people are so annoying. You love them, but they're the worst. They're just always like, having needs and like having children, forget it. Like their feelings get hurt and somebody's not nice to them. I mean, it's the literal worst. And so you have to acknowledge that there's the first law of thermodynamics is that energy is neither created nor destroyed. It is transferred from one form to another. If you have this fire, this bubbling, repressed emotional world, it needs to be felt somewhere. And so it expresses through a migraine. And you say, the problem is the migraine. And I have such empathy and connection for the problem is the migraine.
Yeah, I mean,
how could you not think it?
I have the same experience because I'm in a human body. It doesn't matter how much I already know about this. If I get a pain somewhere, my first thought is, did I bump it?
Yeah.
Did I fall?
Did I sleep on it wrong?
Well, I don't think that.
What did I
that was
eat?
But what did I eat? What did I eat is a big one. And I think what you're talking about is that our brains process all of this emotional, baggage, right?
Yeah, overwhelm.
As predatory.
Yes. The predator's within.
Yes, it's an internal predator.
Yes.
And so, but I think what we don't realize is that our lives are so full of these things and our brains do not know how to process them.
Yes.
Right? And so when we express it, or when we're able to think about it, or give some space to it, and it doesn't kill you, then your brain knows it's not a predator anymore.
And there's another thing that I was talking to a neuroscientist the other day, and I actually think this was worthwhile. I would have said this on the Today Show if I had more time, so I'll say it here. Something that I don't think people necessarily know, and I didn't even know, that when you put your finger on a hot stove and you burn your finger, people think that the pain you're feeling is coming from your finger, and it is not. What happens when you put your finger on a hot stove is that your finger sends messages to your brain, and your brain sees that the sensory environment has changed. And as a result of that, your brain sends signals back to your finger, and you feel pain. And it is exactly the same for all pain. And so if you're in a situation where your reservoir is up to here, it's bubbling over, your nervous system switches into long-term fight or flight. And another point is that your nervous system does not ask your permission or your opinion before it protects you. And thank God, because if our nervous systems asked us permission before we jumped out of the way of a moving car, we would all be dead. The whole point is that it's kept us alive for all this time that humans have walked the earth. And so we can't expect that we could think away this experience of protection from chronic overwhelm, chronic repressed emotions, then we could think away, taking our hand off a stove. Oh no, I don't know, is it hot? Is it really burning me? No, you just pull it. It's a reflex. And this is the same exact thing. And I think one other thing that would be really helpful for people to understand is pain, any pain, is a protective posture. So let's say you are booked to go to the family reunion, and you're going to go there and you're going to see Aunt Ethel. And Aunt Ethel is just always criticizing you. She's criticizing your parenting. What are you wearing? Have you gained weight? You know, Aunt Ethel is relentless. And it reminds you of that bully in 3rd grade, and it reminds you of the way you were treated by this one and that one. So you get a migraine. Your back goes out. You know, your stomach is sick. You can't go. So now you're in bed, curtains drawn, and I like to call this safe in the unsafest way. Pain is a protective posture. If that predator of the way it makes you feel inside, the internal predator of being criticized by this person is up here, you are going to be protected without your permission or your opinion by your nervous system. And that is why when we do the work to put a ladle into the reservoir and lower it, and you know what's going on, and you can say, yeah, I don't like seeing her, but it's not going to kill me. I don't like seeing her, but it's not dangerous. Then you do not have to be home. And if you want to be home, you can still make that choice. But that is really important for people to understand how protective the pain is.
And so I think this helps us get to the next place, which is what do we do about these chronic symptoms and this chronically dysregulated nervous system, right? Which is really the issue. And our bodies were never meant to have our nervous systems dysregulated this much for so long.
Well, that's the problem. 21st century life is an onslaught of predators.
Ugh.
Your
Don't open your
self-worth,
phone.
your family, your phone, social media, the government. You know, we're in New York, so I can say it like that.
Yes, you can.
You know, the bottom line is, if we are to regulate, we have to have a system, a plan. You know, there has to be a program. So I think this brings us back to Dr. Sarno telling me to journal.
I think it does too. And this is a moment where I need to pull back for a second and just say partly how I feel your book really does speak to the legacy.
Oh shit, we haven't even talked about the book.
No, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. We have time.
This is also about
look,
this.
we still have time. Okay, so there are many people who have written many things and they've been really wonderful in this field, actually. And that's a great piece of information for all of you because there's lots to read. But Nicole's work is so true to the basic tenets of my father's work. And part of it is their natural vulnerability, their natural generosity with their, you know, Nicole shares her story, she shares her vulnerability. She does a piece of work in the book that she does on her podcast all the time where she skepticism is part of the work, right? And she invites everybody to borrow her belief, right? And this is unbelievably generous if you really think about it. And so there's places where I see my father, where I read the book, and also when I listen to you talk. But you know, when I read the book, because that's what we're talking about, and I really hear him and I hear his influence. And then there's places where I don't, and it's amazing. Because you see the evolution and you see the way your lived experience became this unbelievably effective program. And I use it with my clients, right? And so I believe in it. Anyway, so I know you were about to talk about how you got from my father's telling you to journal. I know, that's what you were gonna talk about. I was gonna talk about it. And to developing the program that's in this book.
So I forgot to say that after I did this work to heal myself, I actually worked with Dr. Sarno and lectured with him at NYU for years and met Christina there as children.
Yes, we were children.
We were literally like 30, 29. We were very young.
We were babies.
Children. Mm-hmm.
And I was real jealous, just so you all know. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When we reconnected a few years ago, she goes, I want to tell you something. When I first met you, I hated you.
Yeah, a lot. And I will say, and I really thought about this coming into this today, right? That envy, and it was real. Because you were working with my father, and I was in school to be a therapist, and you were already a therapist, and he would come home. Well, I wasn't at home at the time, but he would say to me like, oh, there's this young, earnest therapist, and she's so wonderful at articulating everything in a way that I cannot. And I was like, she sounds great.
Whatever.
Whatever, Dad. But one of the things that I really wanted to share with the audience is how that envy turned to gratitude, right? Because it is my message in my way, and your message in your way is so important right now. Ooh, I'm getting teary.
I see that. You know, listen, here's the thing. There's never going to be enough time in a we could sit here with you guys till like midnight, and we would love it. I don't know if you guys would love it. We would be
so happy.
We would be enjoying it.
And we were told to watch the time.
Yeah, and we see it. But here's what I want to say about the Journal Speak, about the solution. I think the most important thing I can say about my connection to Dr. Sarno is this. After he threw out my work and he told me I was angry, one of the things he said to me that I will never forget, and I have never stopped saying to all of you, is, Nicole, you're going to be okay, and I am sure. He looked at me and he said, there's nothing wrong with you. I know you thought something was wrong with you, and it is legitimate that you did, but I know that nothing is wrong with you because I've been doing this for 100 million years, and I'm telling you that I know if you do this work, you're going to be fine. And that is what I do for you because I know, because I've seen so many people with the worst diagnoses, and I've seen people who just have like, I know, a little headache, a little this, say, you're never going to believe it. And I say, try me. Because I know how this works. So even though on an evening like this, there's never time to do a deep dive into every bit of the solution, here's what I want to say. Do I have a picture? It's even up there. Okay. In this book, I have taken everything I learned from this phenomenal genius of a man, everything I have lived in my own body, every story I have heard. I see people in the audience. I see you guys who have done this work, who have lived this work, and who are living free and vibrant lives as a result. And I am grateful for you because you give me more human beauty to share with the world. And the end of every one of these chapters is a story in a person's own words. I took a lot of care not to edit them except for just, a little bit of grammar and a little bit of slimming down the paragraphs. That was it. These people will be with you in their despair, in their awakening, in their hard work, and telling you how they did it, and in their gratitude. And it is stunning to watch people change their lives, and it is available to everyone because there is no cure for human pain, and there is no cure for the human condition, but there is a cure for chronic pain because chronic pain is an epidemic of fear and meaning and a confused dance between your brain, your nervous system, and your body that can be righted. And each person on this planet has so much more power than they realize to affect their physical and emotional health. And so, Journal Speak is not normal journaling, and there's a lot of complex, strategy around it, and everything is in here. And there's nothing that brings me more joy than to be able to hand somebody one thing, one book, and say, it's all in here. And what an honor to be here with you, Christina, because you know what? I could say all I want that Dr. Sarno thought that my stuff was good, but his own daughter says it too.
He did.
So.
It's absolutely true. No, I know we are really close on our time, but I really want to ask you, why did you write this book now?
I wrote this book now because we have reached a moment in our collective consciousness that I believe we are ready to hear it. I worried for many years that if whatever I did, hit the world too soon, it would be dismissed. It would be misunderstood. But with the science that has come from the best institutions in the world, Harvard just put out a study last year. All the science is linked in the book. For those people who need the science, it's there. We are ready. And you know what? Here's another thing. Readiness comes often from desperation. And the thing about chronic pain and long COVID and all the stuff we hear about in the media is that when there are no solutions, it is the human spirit that seeks new answers. And that's what this is. And this is literal hope. Hope for people who have been hopeless. And so that's why this book now, because people need it. We are a suffering planet. As Lisa said, nearly 2 billion people in the world suffer from chronic pain. And chronic pain is a family disease, as everyone knows in here if you have struggled with it, which means that it's far more billions than that because it's everybody's family and children and people who have worried about them.
Absolutely. And I need to say that the way in which you are able in the book and here clearly and in all the public forums that you speak, the way you're able to articulate what it is that's happening, I think will genuinely reach more people than have in the past. And in my opinion, and I work clinically all the time, I feel that this is foundational knowledge. This is not an add-on. This is not alternative. This is foundational, and it's no longer ethical, in my opinion, that it isn't part of medical education, part of education for all psychotherapists, all the different, because the reality is that if we're not working with this knowledge, then we're feeding the issue, right? We're creating more fear.
Yes, yes. So we look to everyone out there. This is a movement. This is not just about me. This is not just about Christina. This is a movement. This is a groundswell of millions and millions of people around the world who will take back their power. And in doing so, we will reach the tipping point where when we speak, people don't say, "What are you talking about?" People say, "Oh, right, yes, that's what is." So thank you guys.
So much.
Thank you for listening. We've got Lisa coming because now we're going to do the audience Q&A. Oh, you don't have a mic on your chair? You got a mic all of your own. Big girl you are.
We collected some questions backstage while you guys have been killing it out here.
All right.
So in no particular order, sometimes we need to feel deep emotion or grief. How do we ensure that doesn't stick with us?
All right. You want me to go or you?
You can take this one.
All right. Deep emotion or grief, how do we make sure it doesn't stick with us? So here's the first thing I'm going to say. If a tree falls in the forest and you are not there to hear it, I promise you it makes a sound. And if there is deep emotion and grief within you, and you are not able to be aware, first of all, that you should listen to it, and if you don't have the skills or the tools to listen to it, it will fall. But it will fall through your back, through your hip, through your bladder, through your head, because it needs to be heard. So even though I totally understand that it would be very worrisome to be with that deep emotion and grief, life is a choice between what hurts and what hurts worse. Thank you. Enough of you knew that. I was taking a chance. And we have to make a choice. So I know it's hard, but if you are willing to go there, you can regulate your nervous system and stop the chronic pain.
I've been in therapy for a while. If I sort of know what's happening under the surface, why do I still have migraines?
I'm going to take this one. So it's certainly about having the opportunity to express what's going on and do some deep soul searching and find out why you tick and the deeper emotions that are not maybe readily available to you. But what's essential in this work is that you make the link to your pain. And often in therapy, because therapists are not taught this work, right? We're taught to help a person manage their pain or live with it or live with whatever the doctor told them to live with, versus making direct links between what is going on, how you are experiencing it, what you're repressing and why, and your pain. And also, my father used to say knowledge is the cure. And the more you understand genuinely about the physiology between the nervous system, like the interplay, and it doesn't matter what language you need to understand it, then your brain no longer needs to protect you. So therapy is fantastic, but not if you're not making the links, right? It won't actually solve your chronic symptoms.
I'll add one thing, that your perception is your reality. And when you say that, it's not just a relational statement, it's a scientific statement. So if you're walking down the street and you see a bush, a shadow, but you think it's someone who's going to jump out and attack you, your entire body will begin the fight or flight process in the exact same way, whether there's a predator there or not. Same changes in circulation, respiration, heart rate, digestion are going to start happening in your body. You're going to prepare to protect yourself. When you see that it's a bush, you start to regulate. But if you perceive your pain to be dangerous, and if you perceive your pain to be chronic and ruining your life, and you're starting to future cast and catastrophize, there's no way to stop that cycle unless you're being taught this and connecting it in therapy.
Right, and I think the other piece that feels we didn't get to in our allotted time is that when you learn something new, you develop a new neural pathway.
Yes, yes.
Every time, right? So it's kind of remarkable if you see scans of the brain because it's constantly changing. And so if you're not learning something new when you're in therapy, then these changes may not happen. And so I think that it's the learning, it's the building awareness, it's linking the awareness, and then having the opportunity to, when you have a flare-up, to be able to take a different perspective, a different route. You're literally making a new route in your brain.
Yeah, and the brain is plastic. It can rewire and change until the day you die. So there is hope for everyone, no matter how old or what stage.
Reversible at any age. And did you mention the camera and the gun? The great quote that...
No, I love that. So I read an article, Demi Moore was being interviewed about her great fame in the 80s and 90s, and she said, I was always such a mess, like in my body, because my brain and my nervous system didn't know the difference between a camera and a gun. And it's a good point, because her perception was that she was unsafe.
Another person asks, I've been in therapy a while. Oh, sorry, that was my mistake.
Same person asked that.
Same person asked that. Someone asked, how can I get rid of my pain if I can't get rid of my life stress? That's a very frequent question. How can I change my entire life for this?
This was when my father got this one.
Yeah, this was like,
the time.
I wouldn't say his favorite question, because I can't say he enjoyed it, but he definitely
I
would.
think he kind of did.
You think he did?
Yeah.
All right. Tell us what he said.
Because he would be like, that's the good news. You don't have to fix your life. You just have to talk about it. Right? I mean, that's what he would tell. To yourself, right. I mean, that's what he would tell me. He would say, you don't have to fix what's going on with you and Laura. You know, but
Laura's really getting skewered here. I mean, I hope she doesn't listen to the podcast.
She's a lovely person, so I hope she doesn't listen to the podcast. But you know, and they think that is a huge misconception, right? The people think, well, this is all good and well, but like, I'm not going to give up my children, and I'm not leaving my job, and the dog still sucks. And so how am I going to live my life, and how am I going to get rid of this chronic pain? And the reality is, it's about giving yourself permission to have the full range of feelings about those things, and then you go on with your life.
Right. And you can still have your crappy relationships, but you don't have to have your migraine.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Right. You can still have your shitty life, but you don't have to be in pain while you have it.
No, right, exactly, because it's way easier to have a shitty life without a migraine.
Right.
Yeah,
And it's way easier to change your shitty life when you don't have a migraine, because as we all know, without your health, you have nothing. So if you're constantly fighting physical pain, you don't have any part of yourself that can grow and expand and change your circumstances, even if you stay in them, change them for the better because you change.
But that's part of what we also have not been able to talk about, which is making a choice.
Yeah.
Right? This work gives you the opportunity to choose. And it's not just about chronic symptoms, it's also about psychological symptoms. It's about chronic anxiety, you know, it's about even depressive symptoms, right? That those mechanisms are all in place to protect you, to distract you from these deeper, darker, uglier things that you're not allowed to say about your dog or about Laura. Right. And that when you know them and you see that they don't kill you, all of a sudden you're a rock star. You can make as many choices as you want.
And your choices give you freedom.
Totally.
Exactly.
You can
Like
say,
that's my
right.
favorite. You know, when we think about the concept of not being free, we can think about a jail. We can think about certain cultures in our society where people are not free. What is the definition of freedom? Choice. If you have choices, you are free, and this work gives you choices.
And a 100% misery back guarantee. Yes. If you ever miss it. Okay. I've been in therapy all my life. How is journal speak different from therapy?
So, okay, so we didn't even really get into journal speak. I'm going to assume that you guys will just like read this book and figure it
Yeah,
out.
because it's really important to know. I heard you talking about your dad and journaling. Nicole has evolved that quite a bit into something called Journal Speak, which you didn't describe, but it is not your garden variety journaling. People shouldn't leave here thinking, I can journal my pain away.
Okay, so real quick, journaling is an expressive writing technique. It is simple, but it's not easy. There will be resistance. There will be blocks that come up that make you think, I'm too tired, or this won't work for me, or I'll do it tomorrow, or I'm too busy, or this isn't a priority. And all resistance is another form of pain. Resistance is a headache. Resistance is a fibro flare, because resistance is your nervous system saying, look away, look away. Your big feelings about this thing you can't change are a predator. So what Journal Speak does is you take 20 minutes and you get in there, and no one needs to hear it or read it but you. So the first difference is it is completely private. You do your Journal Speak, you do it you can type it or you can write it. People ask me that all the time. And then when your 20 minutes is done, you destroy it. And the reason you destroy it is I want you to feel totally safe to say it all. And this is the voice in which Journal Speak is spoken. A 5-year-old who wants a cookie before dinner. Kicking, screaming, unreasonable, looking at their mom and saying, I hate you, you're the worst mommy. And like 20 minutes later, once they've had something to eat, I love you, mommy, you're the best mommy. This is about a voice inside of you that is not logical, not reasonable, not polite. It needs to come out, because even though we are all lovely grown-up adults who go through life and do all our stuff, inside you are 5 years old. You don't want to do it. You don't want to get up. You don't want to go to work. You don't want to be nice to people. You don't want to be reasonable. You don't want to compromise. You don't want to. And it's happening in here. And sometimes Journal Speak is as simple as letting that voice express itself enough that your brain says, she doesn't want to, but she's got to do it, so we'll go do it. And it's not a predator anymore. So it's a practice where you're going to do this. It's so private. It's so rude. It's so rude. It's so unreasonable, and it's okay because nobody is listening.
And
but
it doesn't
you.
stay true.
And it doesn't stay true. You say horrible things. You say, I'm done. I'm not doing this work. I need to say something quickly. I don't know how many minutes I have, like 2. Last night, I texted you this. I was walking uptown, and I have not been alone for one moment this entire week. It has been a busy week, and for some reason, briefly, I was alone. And I was walking and had my AirPods in. I'm listening to music, and I started to cry. And I started to cry because I didn't give up. Every freaking day, I got on the podcast, and I got on Instagram, and I was in my practice, and I just didn't give up, even though the door gets slammed in your face a lot when you're trying to pave a new path in the world. And because of that, I just was feeling just this tremendous amount of gratitude. And I was thinking about my family and this life I have chosen. And had I not known about Journal Speak, had I not invented it, but had I not practiced it all these years, I promise you, I would not be able to overcome the things I had to overcome in order to not give up. Because it keeps you honest, but it doesn't stay true. And there are so many times in my Journal Speak, I've literally said, and I've told Lisa this, I'm not doing it anymore. Nope, I'm done. I give up. I'm not doing it anymore. Because I said it there, so I didn't have to live it. And that is the freedom that it gives you. You can say, I can't stand my husband. I never want to see him again. and then have so much space to love him because that little 5-year-old inside doesn't have to stay and be repressed. It doesn't stay true. It's unreasonable, but it sets you free.
And it's impossible to describe until you do it yourself. So everyone really will have to experience it themselves. I can say that anyone in this room who knows me knows that I was injecting myself with migraine medication
Yes.
at the end of having taken every possible medication that was available. And I no longer get migraines because of Journal Speak.
For
Period.
years.
Period.
She hasn't had a
Yeah.
migraine in almost 3 years. So
Next. Yes. Next question is, I'm a believer in the method and it's helped a lot, but I still get flare-ups. How do you address the last 10% of pain?
what do you think?
Okay, we'll share it.
All right. Well, should we tell them?
Okay, I'm gonna tell them.
No, I don't know.
I'm gonna tell them. No, I'm gonna tell them because Lisa said this the other day, and it really helped. Wear it loosely, right? Try to be a little less attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
The outcome is like being outcome driven is part of your perfectionism, is part of your neuroticism, is part of the way you got there in the first place, right? And it's also the human condition, right? I mean, part of how I hold it loosely, because I get stuff all the time, right, is like I'm human and I can make a choice of what hurts and what hurts worse, right? And sometimes I'm like, yeah, all right, so my hips are killing me. Okay. Like, I don't really feel like looking into it. And then other times I'm like, okay, I'm gonna look into it. But I think, you know, it can, after years and years of suffering, I think it can feel so hideous and infuriating, and please journal that, like journal speak that you still have some leftover. But to be a little less committed to it, I think is really the key. And then it becomes less important.
And if we're looking at it through the lens of brain science, which is my favorite, urgency to heal is read by the nervous system as fear. Desire to be different than you are is read by the nervous system as fear. So if you have 10% left and you're like, God damn it, I just got to get rid of it, all your nervous system hears is fear, 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 up the symptoms, there's a problem, send a solution, which is pain, which is protective. And so I say to people, and I know they hate it, but I say it anyway, radical acceptance of your situation is the key. Because if you just say, however this goes, it's okay for me, even though I know you care, we can keep it between us. I know you want the pain gone, but if you say, if it goes, if it doesn't go, it's fine with me, that's when it has the permission to go. Because wearing it loosely means you are not attached to outcomes. You're not clinging. And when you're not clinging, what the nervous system sees is, there's nothing to see here. You know, I picture like in those movies where like there's someone with like a megaphone and they're like, disperse, disperse, there's nothing to see here. Like as soon as there's legitimately nothing to see here and there's no urgency, the pain signals get less and less and less, and then one day you just don't notice them anymore.
I mean, my own 10% was represented by the belief that things have some sort of conclusion, that you're healed, that you've arrived, that you're done. When I began to accept the endlessness, like that nothing ever ends.
It sounds really hard, but it's really freeing.
It's so freeing. So, you know, my daughter Izzy is in the audience, and one of the things I told her, because we're always talking about life in its deepest moments, is how about we start with everything is ruined. Everything is ruined. What a delight. People are imperfect. Relationships will be hard. I won't always feel good about myself. Let's just start there and then live. Live from that place of authenticity. Live from that place of freedom, because you don't need it to be perfect. You just allow it to be. And one last thing I'll say, because I really think we have to wrap, is that, well, I don't know if we're allowed to have them.
Couple more.
But one time Lisa called me, and she doesn't get migraines anymore, but she gets headaches. We all get headaches. We all get stuff. And she's walking around the block, and she called me, and she said, oh, it's just so annoying because it's one thing after the other, and it never ends. And I said, hey, guess what? It never ends.
But it was incredibly freeing,
Yeah.
ultimately.
By the end of the walk, you didn't have the headache. I
Yeah.
remember that. So it's just sit with it, marinate. You know, we're just planting a
If you're
seed.
holding on to anything, it's going to, what you resist persists.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this, I promise, really did land on back there. The January 19th New York Times Magazine did an article on chronic pain and did not mention mind, body, science, exclamation point. Right?
Sorry.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
That's been a rough one for us.
I have a friend who's a journalist for the Times.
Are they here?
Would you pitch a separate article to write about mind, body, science for treating chronic pain? So now we have a phone number to reach out on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that
Hallelujah.
question. Whoever you are, thank you.
Hallelujah. So here's what I will say about big news outlets and the two messages we get, which is we have no idea why this is going on and there is no solution, is just, I beg you to come sit by me. Because the human stories alone of the transformation in people's lives are so stunning that I dare any journalist who hears it from my voice to ignore it and not write the article. So you know what? Come at me, people. This is a podcast.
Yeah.
Come at me.
I think that actually journalists have a really powerful opportunity. Because in a way that is much harder for professional communities to take this up because it goes against everything they learned in medical school, right? I mean, that's a really...
Or it just simply wasn't taught.
That's
Yeah.
what I mean. It wasn't taught. I mean, it wasn't taught, but a solidly fact-checking journalist will know that this is real, this is out there, this is not like for fun, this is not alternative, this is happening worldwide and has been since my father did his work. Yeah. Right? This is years and years and years. So if you think you get pissed off when you see a front page article about the hopelessness of chronic pain,
I can only imagine.
and was written up in the Times many times.
Yeah.
So I think there's a collective defensiveness. I get it. It's a tough thing to look at.
But you know what? Here's what I'll say, and after this, we're really going to be done. The last thing is this. As we move through the world, it's not just about the New York Times, and it's not just about being on the Today Show. I'll say it again. It's every one of you. This is a movement. As you tell your friends, as you give someone this book as a gift, as you refer someone to the podcast, and you say, just give it a try. Just replace your skepticism with curiosity and see, because this is your life. What is it worth? Is it worth changing your mind maybe a little? Is it worth opening? There was once a time when the earth was flat, and of course it was flat. I rode my horse from here to here, and it was flat. I look out onto the ocean, and it's a flat line, and it was flat because it was all we could see with our eyes. And the only way anything changes is when we open our minds and we see differently. So with that, I would like to thank you for being here. Joy. And I would like to say to everyone out there, this has been the Cure for Chronic Pain podcast with me, Nicole Sachs. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.